Good morning. All right. Just wait for people to get settled. Welcome, everyone. Usually, Khenpo Karze leads this class. In case you missed the Gampo's introduction, Khenpo Karze is on retreat, and so I am the substitute teacher for the next 6 weeks. We're not going to be watching boring documentaries. We're still going to do our meditation.
We promise we'll behave.
Yeah, okay. I'll let them know who the troublemakers are. So we're going to start with 3 7-line prayer, which Gampo will lead, and I'm just going to put that up on screen for the people online.
This prayer is
In this.
Organ yogi num chansam, lemage sardombola, yatsen chogi ngorupne, lemajone jesudrak, ordukandro mangbogor, Gergi Jesu Dagdruki, Jinjilo Chir Sheksu So, Guru Pema Siddhi Hon, Organ Yogi Num Jansam, Pemage Sardompola, Yatsen Chogi Nodrupne, Pema Jone Jesudrak, Ordukandro Mangbogor, Getki Jesu Dagdruki, Jinjilo Jir Sheksu So, Guru Pema Siddhi Hon, Organ Yogi Num Jansam, Pemage Sardombola, Yatsen Chogi Nodrupne, Pema Jone Jesudrak, Ordukandro Mangbogor, Getki Jesu Dagdruki, Jinjilo Chir Sheksu So, Guru Pema Siddhi Hon. Right. So for the next 6 weeks, we're going to be focusing on the practice of Tonglen, or sending and receiving, also called the practice of exchanging self and others. And this practice opens our heart to the suffering of others. It diminishes our self-cherishing. It deepens our compassion and loving kindness, and it develops bodhicitta, which is the awakened mind committed to benefiting all beings. And many of you are probably already familiar with Tonglen. It's one of the more well-known meditation methods in the West. And we do a brief Tonglen practice each week in the Saturday morning class. The Saturday morning class is a little bit more, we do meditation. We do 3 meditations. We do shamatha and Tonglen and Jetsuma's light expansion prayer. And we kind of just roll through the meditations. It's more like just like going through the meditations. In this class, we talk more about the context of the meditations and the reasoning behind them and the philosophy. And there's more of a talk in this class. So we do a brief Tonglen meditation on Saturdays. And I find it really helpful. And I find it extremely helpful for this time that we are living in. And so I thought it'd be really great to spend these 6 weeks doing kind of a deep dive on Tonglen and learning different ways, different visualizations that you can use to do that practice. So each week we'll try a different Tonglen visualization. Some parts of it will be the same and some parts will be different. These meditation instructions are from The Heart of Compassion, which is a commentary by Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche on one of the most revered texts of Tibetan Buddhism, the 37 verses on the practice of a bodhisattva, which was composed in the 14th century by Gyaltse Ngolchu Togme. And the 37 verses on the practice of a bodhisattva, it's a very long title, but it's a very short, concise poem of 37 shlokas, or kind of like stanzas. And it's concise, it's profound, it's easy to memorize, and so it's very popular. And it's considered a distillation of another seminal Mahayana text, the Bodhicharyavatara, or The Way of the Bodhisattva by Shantideva. So it's really cool. Gyaltse Ngolchu Togme, he actually, people were telling him, like, you should be giving teachings. You can make a lot of money giving teachings, and you're so amazing and profound. You should really go get famous, kind of you should go do that. And so instead he went and sat in a cave and wrote a poem, which became this incredible work, the 37 verses on the practice of a bodhisattva. So The Way of the Bodhisattva by Shantideva really encapsulates the entirety of this path that we practice. It covers everything, covers all aspects of it. And so the 37 verses really distills that into a way that you can remember all aspects of the path by memorizing these verses. I do not have these verses memorized yet. It would be lovely to do that. But it's really incredible the way that, just memorizing a few lines, then you read it and then you read the commentary and it's like, wow, all of this is kind of condensed into this one little phrase that then I can use to remember, wow, all of this information. It's a really great way to remember all of that. So the reason that I find Tonglen so helpful for this moment and why I wanted to focus on this practice is that there's so much division and hatred right now. It's just all encompassing. There's just so much division. And we have so many influences in our lives. We have, talking heads on TV or social media, content creators, or these dramatic clickbait headlines that are intended to goad us into an emotional reaction and to jump to our worst conclusions about others, or assign blame before we understand a whole story. We have all of this stuff like that, or all of these influences through the media and through our daily interactions that are encouraging us to take part in this divisiveness and encouraging our emotional reactivity and inflaming our biases and our fear and our anger. And we're just swimming in it all the time being encouraged to think divisively and to act divisively and to speak divisively. And for instance, as an example of how extreme the divisiveness is, we're now in an era of increasing stochastic terrorism, which, stochastic terrorism is when the public demonization of a person or group results in the incitement of a violent act, which is statistically probable, but whose specifics cannot be predicted. So that means that a person or an organization with a large media platform uses their platform and uses language designed to demonize, dehumanize, or incite hatred against a specific person or a specific group. And their hateful speech, this hateful rhetoric, creates the causes and conditions for violence. And the call to violence is implied, or dog whistles, or it's just a joke and you're just taking things too seriously, like lighten up, so they can deny that they have incited any violence. And most people won't hear the call to violence, but some will. And a few people will act on it. And the people who act on it, then we call lone wolves. And it seems impossible to predict that that tragedy would have happened right there, right then, to those people. Wrong place, wrong time. This is just horrible. This happened. Who could have predicted this person, that place, whatever? You couldn't. But you can predict that it would have happened somewhere. You can predict that with that kind of environment, with that kind of hateful speech permeating the environment, violence will occur. It is statistically obvious. That kind of speech makes threats and terror attacks more likely. So, and this, what I've noticed is that this comes from people who are in power, and traditionally stochastic terrorism, the definition of it is coming from people in power. But I've also noticed it almost being crowdsourced in a way now. Like you might have seen these on social media, but there are videos now, there's many videos on social media where someone just looks at the camera and says, someone's got to do it. Someone's got to do it. And they don't say what it is, but you know what they're talking about. You know that they are saying someone has to do this violent act. And you know who they're talking about, and you know what they're saying. And it's implied. And many, 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 many people are making videos saying that someone's got to do it. And so what's interesting to me is in this time, it's not just this stochastic terrorism. We now have a situation where so many people have platforms. Traditionally, there would be very few people who had mass media reach and their speech could be that influential. But now we're in a situation where everyone's speech can be so influential. So many more people have the power to influence the environment we're in through whether their speech is hateful or compassionate. And then, while some people encourage violence implicitly or explicitly, other people encourage neglect or hard-heartedness. And it seems like people are always looking for reasons not to care about others. Like, for instance, with these horrible floods that just happened in Texas, and it's just tragic. This river rose 26 feet in like an hour, and at 4 a.m., just raging through a valley full of summer camps, of children sleeping at summer camps. And I keep seeing people on the internet saying things like, well, you know how Texas voted. They voted for this. And it's so heartless. It's so heartless to think, and you hear this about other tragedies that happen, other wars that happen in the world, or other conflict. Well, they shouldn't have voted for those people, and that's it. Written it off. I don't have to care. They shouldn't have voted that way. And you've just excused yourself from needing to care about it. They brought it on themselves. Or, families torn apart by ICE. People say, well, they shouldn't have crossed the border. Off my list. Don't have to care. Don't have to care anymore. Or people that are assaulted for being trans. That's what you get. That's what people say. That's what you get for being that way in public, for existing in public. Now I don't have to care for you because I've decided that's what you get. You made a choice and you receive the consequences, and I don't have to care. And that's what you get. It's such a heartless way to think about the world. And people try to weaponize karma in this way too, because karma is all about that's what you get, right? You did this, so you get this. So people think about karma like that too often, and weaponize it and rejoice in the idea that their enemies will suffer in the future for whatever they're doing now. Well, karma's going to get them. I have faith in karma. Karma, they're going to pay, kind of thing. And it's the opposite of how we should think. We should never be wishing harm on others. We should never be rejoicing in other people experiencing harm. We should be wishing for all beings, even those we detest, to be happy and have everything they need. Because you know what? If they were happy and they had everything they need, they wouldn't be bothering you because they'd be over there happy. They wouldn't need anything from you. They wouldn't be harassing you. So the answer to everyone's problem is for them to be happy. So all day, every day, our phones are feeding us this just toxic gunk of everyone's opinions and hot takes. And the vast majority of it, of our daily world, our daily interactions, what we're consuming online, encourage us or reinforces the normalizes considering our own comfort above others. And encourages us to desire more things or experiences, to envy our friends' vacations and their perfect looking lives, to judge everyone and everything. Oh gosh, this outfit's horrible. How could this person think they're a fashion influencer? Who would put that outfit together? Just everything, like just judge it, judge it, judge it. And comment, tell people your judgments, share it, make other people read your judgments too and respond and make them angry. And, it's just like encourages us to provoke each other's emotions and judgments and to hate those that are different from us, whether in appearance or ideology. And even within our own in-groups, we have our ideological purity tests, and we seek to punish those who fall outside of our little conceptual boxes. Not just that we say, oh, they're not in the same box as me. We seek to punish them for not fitting in the box. We then want them to fail, or we seek to harm their careers, or there's like efforts to, if you don't fit in, if you don't fit into this box, you just shouldn't fit in anywhere. There's kind of these like attempts to control people and corral them into being how we want them to be. And that is a condition for aligning with them and for, aligning our hearts with them and caring about them. So swimming in this toxic waste all day, every day has an effect on our mind. And I think we all know it has an effect on our mind, but I think we underestimate it the same way that teenagers underestimate the influence that their friends have on them. Everybody knows teenagers' friends have an influence on them. And as a teen, I know, your friends have an influence on you, choose your friends wisely, all of that, but you don't get it. You don't really get how much of an influence your friends have on you. And your parents know, and your parents are like, really, you're going to hang out with them again? Like, I don't know about that, but like, you don't realize just how much they sway you from your center. So we have to guard our minds from this garbage. And we also have to actively practice the opposite to counter its effects and to counter our habit of self-cherishing. Since time out of mind, we've practiced caring about ourselves more than others. And it's a habit that's so ingrained by us and then encouraged by our world over and over again. So we have to deliberately practice the opposite. We have to deliberately practice caring about others, deliberately practice compassion and loving kindness, and practice loving our enemies. Because we're not just going to wake up one day and like, I really feel like loving my enemies today. Like it's not our habit. It's not going to happen. You have to choose to try to learn how to do something that is completely against the way that you've wired yourself. Doesn't mean you can't rewire yourself, but you've wired yourself this way over lifetimes. And so it just takes some effort to connect some different synapses and make some new connections and practice that. We have to understand that we have common cause with each other. And our struggles and our liberation are intertwined in relative truth, but also in ultimate truth. We are interdependent with all life. And our sense of separateness, any sense of separateness, is an illusion. In Dzogchen Jamyang Khyentse Rinpoche, he says that some say the dark age of vice, Kali Yuga, is here now, or at least coming soon. What determines if an age is dark or golden? What are the symptoms of omens? What are the symptoms or omens? Earthquakes, violent skies, meteoric activity. These are not the omens of doomsday as we are made to believe. Likewise, cherubs flying, a sound economy, freedom of information, peaceful times are also not necessarily signs of a golden age. The age of light is said to be when people value empathy and forgiveness, when they have a willingness to see other people's view and are contented with what they have. When such values are systematically sabotaged, then you can say that the dawn of the doomsday has begun. When we look at a harmless beggar as a pest and envy billionaires who routinely destroy the earth, we are inviting doomsday to come. So if we think about the world, is doomsday coming? The Khyentse Rinpoche says that a truly good altruistic mind is the source of temporary happiness, good health, long life, wealth, as well as of ultimate bliss, which is liberation from samsara, or cyclic existence, and attainment of unchanging enlightenment. All the sorrows of samsara, wars, famines, illnesses, and natural calamities arise from hatred and other inner poisons. When injurious thoughts prevail and people think of nothing but harming each other, the general welfare of the world declines daily. If people's minds are permeated with the wish to help others, the general welfare of the world steadily increases. So this practice of Tonglen permeates our minds with the wish to help others. So by doing this practice, we can steadily increase the general welfare of the world. We should never underestimate the power of even a single compassionate thought, because been like the Buddha, before he was the Buddha, when he was a bodhisattva and he was on his way to Buddhahood, he was reborn in many different lifetimes as different animals. And you can read about these lives. There's like the stories, the Jataka tales. And you can read about these lives and be born as various animals and teach his fellow animals about the Dharma. He would teach them he would tell them to stop harming each other and encourage them to, to work together and to live in peace and harmony. And the power of his altruistic mind was so great that wherever he was born, as an animal, even just as this bodhisattva who's being taking birth as an animal, wherever he was born, in the surrounding countryside, all of the harvest would be bountiful. No beings would go to the lower realms. People would be happy. They would live peacefully, just from this compassion radiating from a bodhisattva squirrel or something, like this little being radiating so much compassion, uplifting this whole region. So we really have a lot of power in the world, our influence that we can extend in the world. The power of compassion is so great. And we think of superheroes being all, they've got super strength or they've got, invisibility or whatever. And so they can go, they can use their mind to throw things around the room or whatever, but like the power of compassion is so much greater than any of that. And, when Guru Rinpoche went to Tibet and he tamed the demons that were there and the harmful beings that were there in the land, he tamed them through his compassion. And he had the power to tame these beings simply because of the power of his compassion. It wasn't that he came in here like the Hulk with super strength or something like that and like smashed the demons. Like it was that he came in with such great compassion. And you even notice like one of the signs of being around, a llama that is a pure llama is that you can notice that when you're around them, you feel more compassionate. You feel more of a desire to care for others. It's like it wears off on you, you know? It's like, so you can think if we go into a place uh, that's really smoky and you leave kind of smelling like smoke, and that happens when we go and we hang out with people who are pulling us from our center, pulling us from our Buddha nature, pulling us into, whatever, we leave with a little tinge of that. And similarly, when we're around people who really call us into our heart and just radiate that compassion, we feel it and we walk away with that perfume, maybe. So there's just a couple concepts that I want to touch on before we do the meditation. I think just for some context to understand it. So one thing is that the Buddha taught that living beings are as limitless as space itself. And the lives that we have lived are limitless too. We've been reborn over and over and over again. And over these countless lives, it's just statistically probable, basically, that surely over this many lives, every single being must have been our mother at one point, because that's how many lives we've lived. If you piled up all of the lives just the lives in which you were reborn as an ant, the weight of those ant bodies that you have been would be way more than the earth. And that's just as one type of creature. Like, there are so many types of creatures, and we've been reborn in so many places, in so many times, so many iterations, and every other being has too. So if you just imagine just how awesome that number would be, of how many lives you must have lived then, it's just, surely every being must have at one point been your mother or your father or something. Down to the tiniest insect, what every single living being wants, what they're striving to do and what they're trying to do, is to enjoy real happiness and freedom and to avoid suffering. But most of them are completely unaware that happiness is the result of positive actions and suffering is the result of negative ones. So in their efforts to be happy, they engage in negative actions, which only brings them more suffering, the opposite of what they're intending. And I think it's important to really understand this, that that everyone's just really ignorant about how the world works. And so when we talk about karma, it's not shame-based or like judgment-based. Like, there's not an external deity out there who's going, you didn't do what I told you to, so like, look what you made me do. I'm going to punish you for that, And we don't have to make people, like, we don't have to shame people for doing things that are wrong, because it's not shame-based. It's not I think in the West, people take a lot of ideas from Christianity, Judaism, the Abrahamic religions, with having an external God. And I think people, as they move to Buddhism, they hear about karma. I think some concepts are kind of overlaid on top of it sometimes. And it also gets confusing because karma is also used in Hinduism, and the definitions of karma and how they work are a little different between Hinduism and Buddhism. So Taylor Swift in her song Karma, she says karma is a god. Karma is not a god. It's not a god. But it's an interesting song because it's about how obeying the law of karma makes you happy, and that those who don't understand that are not going to be happy. But she takes a little bit of an edge of like rejoicing that like her enemy doesn't get it, that their enemy's not going to be happy for the choices they're making. So we don't want to be judging others like that and rejoicing in their suffering. What we need to understand is that karma is like karma is the law of cause and effect, and it's like gravity. It's like the law of gravity. It just is. It's a science. It's not shame, it's science. It's just what's going to happen. So the other day I found myself trying to explain gravity to my 3-year-old. And because, as you know, 3-year-olds ask a lot of questions. And so I'm trying to explain gravity, and I picked up a raisin and I asked him, if I drop this raisin, is it going to fall or is it going to fly? And he said, it's going to fall. And I dropped it and it fell. He knew. He's 3. He understands gravity. He doesn't need to understand the science of it right now, but he knows already 3 years old. He's had enough experience of the world that he understands that if I drop something, it's going to fall to the ground. He doesn't think sometimes it might fly, it might fall. I don't know what's going to happen. Like, who knows? And with karma, because people don't understand that, it's like not understanding gravity and thinking, maybe if I jump off of this, I'll fly. And so, but instead what we're doing is we're saying, oh, if I steal this, I'll have money. I'll be rich. If I steal, I'll be rich. If I harm others, I'll be happy. That is the same as saying, if I jump off this roof, I'll fly. It's not the way it works. But people don't understand that. So they're just jumping off roofs all the time and hurting themselves because they don't know. And gravity is easy to observe. Apple falls on a guy's head. He figures it out. We've got the law of gravity, right? Like, it's easy. We could just sit here tossing things all day and we can see them fall on the ground, and it's very easy to observe. Karma unfolds over lifetimes, and we only see, because we don't have the wisdom to see all of our different lifetimes, we only see this little bitty bit of it. So it's like seeing one episode of a like 20 season plot, 250,000 season plot, and you seeing one episode and you're like, wow, that's a bad guy. Oh, wow, they're rich. They did this thing. Like, oh, they must be, that must be how this works. And like, you don't understand the plot. You're missing so much of the plot. And similarly, the people that we think are friends and the people that we think are enemies, the same thing. You have not seen the plot. You're sitting down to a steak dinner, and that cow was once your mother, and you loved her. And you're holding your baby in your arms, and you love them so much. And in some lifetime, that kid killed you. Like, he ate you for dinner one time, but you love him so much. Like, how could you not love him? But so our ideas about who our friends are, who our enemies are, it's all an illusion, because we don't know how we know people. We don't know our history with them. And we've all been friends, and we've all been enemies, and we've all been mothers and daughters to each other so many times. I really like this show, Heroes, from a while back. That they did a really great job in the show of like, you never knew who was going to be on the same side. People were constantly changing sides in this show. There was like good guys and bad guys, but every single character spent some time on the good side and some time on the bad side. And it was really interesting how people who were mortal enemies, another episode, they worked together, and they did a great job of just showing the nuance and complexity of good versus bad, and how so much of that, it just depends on context, and there's no such thing as a permanent enemy or a permanent friend. The relationships are always changing. So when we think about this state of affairs, we think about people, think about beings seeking happiness, trying to be happy, but acting in ways that just bring them more suffering. When you think about this, a feeling of great compassion naturally arises in you. And on a practical level, actually, so one more thought about karma. The cruel thing about karma, something else I want people to understand, the cruel thing about karma is that it compounds over time. So you might think that the only people suffering in hell are awful people like Hitler, and that there is this one-to-one. Maybe you think there's like a one-to-one relationship that I do, you think, oh, I'm willing to take the risk of stealing this pen, oh, I forgot to give the pen back after I signed my receipt, and that's okay. Like, so what? Someone will steal a pen from me someday. That compounds. Karma compounds interest. So when we think about karma, we shouldn't think about it as just I stole a pen, someone's going to steal a pen from me. We should think about this more like student loan debt, where it's going to compound interest like nobody's business. And you're going to, and student loan debt, you could have paid you could have borrowed $80,000. You've already paid $100,000 and you still owe your original $80,000, maybe more, because it compounded over time. So karma, over time, it compounds. If we're lucky, we experience instant karma. Then you do get kind of a one-to-one. Didn't have any time to accrue interest. But if you don't experience the result of the action right away in that instant karma, it hangs there. It follows you like a shadow. And whenever you experience the result, it will be it tends to grow over time. Karma tends to grow over time. So people really don't know what they're getting into with any of their actions, because not only do they not understand the law of karma and what actions bring about happiness, but they also don't understand the kind of interest that is there on their actions and how a small negative action can have a very large negative effect. So on a practical level, the mere fact that we feel compassion for beings is not really of any use to them. Because right now, however much we want to help others, we're beginners and we lack the capacity to do much to help anyone with this situation. So the first step that we need to take is to train our mind and to perfect ourselves, to work on the 6 perfections, generosity, patience, and so on, and train and transform our mind. So the Tonglen practice, when we talk about meditation methods, we often describe shamatha or calm abiding meditation, where we focus our attention on the breath. We often describe that as being very stabilizing to the mind. What I think many people don't realize is that practicing compassion is also stabilizing to the mind, because what's rocking the boat? Self-concern. So if we remove our self-concern, we don't have someone rocking the boat all the time of like, this upsets me. I don't like this. I like this. I want this. I don't want this. If we're not so concerned with ourselves, that all chills out. So compassion is also very, very stabilizing to the mind, very calming to the mind, and it really helps to tame the turbulence that we experience. So it's said that all suffering without exception arises from desiring happiness for oneself, while perfect Buddhahood is born from the thought of benefiting others. Therefore, to really exchange my own happiness for the suffering of others is the practice of a bodhisattva. And this practice of exchanging oneself and others consists of trying to put yourself in the place of others and others in your place. And the idea is, on one hand, we imagine that we're giving away to all beings whatever good things may happen to us, however small they may be. A spoonful of good food, some new shoes, whatever. On the other hand, we remember the unbearable sufferings that the beings are going through, and we make up our mind to take all those sufferings upon ourselves with the same readiness a mother feels when she takes upon herself the suffering of her child. That same kind of feeling that you would do anything for your child. We think that way towards all beings. So in this meditation, we're sending out our goodness to all beings, and we're also we bring their suffering into ourselves. And something that is important to understand is emptiness, the concept of emptiness here, because when people think about a question that I get sometimes with this practice is that if we're bringing other people's suffering into ourselves, isn't that going to harm us? And it's not. You think you have something to protect, but there's nothing to protect. There's nothing here to protect. There's also, so emptiness, when we talk about emptiness in Buddhism, basically means that things do not appear as they seem. So things seem very real and solid, but everything is actually more like an illusion or a mirage that is held up through interdependence, basically. This dress is made of threads and effort and someone stitching it together, right? And which thread makes up this dress? If I pull this dress apart thread by thread, which thread was the dress? None of them. The dress is the composite of all of these threads and the effort that it put, of putting it together. So everything is composite and therefore impermanent, and it has no inherent existence. It's more like a rainbow. It appears for a time, but it does not have a true independent existence. And that includes ourselves. That includes the food we eat. That includes the Buddhas. It includes the path that we walk on. None of it inherently exists. It is a mirage. It's a dream. It's a soap bubble. So when we do this practice, we remember the emptiness of our own self, the practitioner, the emptiness of the object of our compassion, all of these beings that we're helping, they are also empty, and the action that we are engaging in is also empty. It doesn't mean it's meaningless. It doesn't mean we're not doing it. It's kind of like a dream. So we just have to know that we're not actually bringing any harm into us. We're bringing the harm in to ourselves, bringing the suffering into ourselves. We actually have an experience of bliss and emptiness. That is what we experience when we bring everyone's suffering into ourselves. We have an experience of bliss and emptiness. So we're not thinking, oh, the suffering, oh, it's so much. It's not, it's empty. Over time doing this practice, you actually will be able to take people's suffering upon yourself and be able to remove their suffering through your compassion. And there are stories of this, where people with such great compassion can lay their hand on someone and relieve their pain just because of the strength of their compassion, their ability to exchange their happiness and suffering. And even those with harmful intentions, even evil spirits who try to steal people's life force, will be powerless to harm you or anyone else if you exchange their suffering and hatred with your happiness and peace. And another reason why I wanted to focus on this practice at this time is that this is a practice, the Tonglen practice is something that you can do at any time, in all circumstances, whether you're sitting in a meditation cushion or you're sitting in a waiting room or on the bus or anywhere. You can do it when you're sick or well. You can practice it anytime. And we're going to do a longer version of it today, but I'll tell you also when we do it afterwards, I'll tell you how you can do it. Just for a minute or two, anytime you want. And by constantly practicing the exchange of self and others, we'll reach the very core of the practice of compassion and bodhicitta. So. I talked a little longer than I intended to, but I intended to do that. So we're going to do the meditation now. So first, it's important to start. Actually, first, we'll just sit in your. If you need to adjust yourself at all, sit in like a meditation posture. You could do that now. I'm already sitting on my cushion. You can be sitting up in a chair. You can be sitting on the cushion. That's fine. It's always good when you're meditating and sit up straight. That's usually the most important thing, is a straight back and a relaxed body. It's important to start by arousing a deeply felt warmth, sensitivity, and compassion for all beings. So to do this, we first begin by thinking about someone who's been very kind and loving to you. This could be your mother. In most cases, traditionally, this would be, we use your mother as the object of your meditation, but it could be anyone that's been kind and loving to you. And remember and reflect on their kindness. If you're thinking of your mother, you could reflect on how she gave you life, how she suffered the discomforts of pregnancy, so many discomforts of pregnancy, and the pain of childbirth, and how she looked after you as you grew up. And she took care of you, and she fed you, and she made sure you had clothes and kept you safe. And she was ready to make any sacrifice for you and to put your welfare before her own. So just reflect on this person's kindness. When you feel strong love and compassion for your mother or whoever you're thinking of, then imagine, step by step, that she is undergoing the sufferings of the 6 realms. In the hell realm, she is repeatedly and brutally killed and revived. She's tossed into a boiling cauldron of molten bronze. She suffers in agony before your very eyes. And then imagine that she's been reborn as a starving spirit, just skin and bones. She hasn't even caught sight of food for 12 years. And she stretches out her hands to you, imploring you, "My child, do you have anything you can give me to eat?" And imagine her reborn as an animal, a terrified doe being chased by hunters and their dogs. And panicked, she leaps off a high cliff to escape them, but she falls and shatters all of her bones and is in unbearable pain, but still alive and unable to move until they find her and finish her off with their knives. So continue to imagine her undergoing, in quick succession, situation after situation of suffering. And if you're not familiar with the sufferings of the six realms, I think that there is enough suffering in the human and animal realms to uh, keep you occupied. As you imagine her suffering, an intense feeling of compassion will irresistibly well up in your mind. And when it does, turn that intense compassion to all beings, realizing that each one of them must surely have been your mother many times and deserves the same love and compassion as your mother or this person of this present life. And it's important to specifically include all of those whom you now consider enemies or troublemakers. Reflect deeply about everything that all these beings are going through as they wander endlessly in samsara's vicious cycle of suffering. Think about old, infirm people unable to care for themselves. Think about all of those who are sick and in pain. People who are desperate and impoverished, lacking even the most basic necessities. About people suffering famine and starvation, the pangs of hunger and thirst. Think about those who are physically blind or handicapped in other ways. Think about those who are spiritually destitute, starved of the nourishment of Dharma, and blind to any authentic vision of truth. Think about all those who suffer as slaves to their own minds, constantly maddened by desire and aggression. Those who harm one another without respite, constantly locked in a cycle of violence. Visualize all of these sentient beings as a crowd in front of you. And let all the different forms that their suffering takes arise vividly in your mind. Considering all these sentient beings, you can think of all of the humans of this world and of all other worlds that have humanoid life. Think of all of the animals of this world and of all other worlds that may have life. And then in addition, all of the different 6 realms, the hungry ghost realm, the jealous gods realms, the long life gods realms, the hell realms. This vast, vast crowd of beings suffering in many, many ways. Visualize it vividly. And with an intense feeling of compassion, then we begin the practice of sending and receiving. So we start by focusing on your most hated enemy, someone who has caused a lot of trouble and difficulty for you. Think of who that person might be. I don't tend to label people as our enemies, but we have them. Someone who has harmed you or seeks to harm you or somehow seems to take your happiness away or causes a lot of trouble for you. Bring that person to mind. And consider that as your breath goes out, all of your happiness, all of your vitality and merit and good fortune, your health and enjoyment is carried out to him on your breath in the form of cool, soothing, luminous white nectar. Make the prayer, may this truly go to my enemy and be entirely given to him. Visualize that he absorbs this white nectar, which provides him with everything that he needs. If his life was to be short, imagine that now it's prolonged. If he needs money, imagine that now he's wealthy. If he's sick, now he's cured. If he's unhappy, now imagine him so full of joy that he feels like singing and dancing. And as you breathe in, consider that you take into yourself, in the form of a dark mass, all of the sickness, obscurations, and mental poisons your enemy may have had, and that he's thereby completely relieved of all his afflictions. Think that his sufferings come to you as easily as mountain mist wafted away by the wind. And as you take his suffering into you, you feel great joy and bliss mingled with the experience of emptiness. Then now, do the same for the infinity of beings that you are visualizing before you, sending them all of your happiness and taking on their suffering. So as you breathe out, all your happiness, your vitality, your merit, your good health, everything is carried out on your breath in the form of cool, soothing, luminous white nectar that is received by every single sentient being, curing their illness, bringing them wealth and happiness and joy. Then as you breathe in the form of a dark mass, all of the sickness, obscurations, and mental poisons of all of the 6 realms that all of these beings may have, bring that into yourself, completely relieving them of these sufferings. All right. So this practice, you can do this practice, and you can, if you're doing this on your own, you can do that for as long as you can do that for. You can just do that for a long time. But even just doing it for a little bit of time on a frequent basis, you will notice the habit of compassion building. And if you want, so this is a long version of the practice. We are spending a long time building up our compassion. We're learning how to first generate the bodhicitta by considering the suffering of our own mother and all sentient beings as our mother. And we're really juicing ourselves up with bodhicitta by spending time on that visualization. Before any Dharma activity, any activity that we do, we should start by arousing the bodhicitta. And if you're at the beginning of a talk, usually we start by saying, okay, we want to take a minute, arouse the bodhicitta. And you're just supposed to kind of do it. Just like jump there. Just jump to that feeling. But so it's good to spend some time when you're not under pressure to do something right away. Spend some time on learning how to generate the bodhicitta. Spend time on this visualization of visualizing your mother or someone you care about suffering, and then all sentient beings suffering, and learn what that feels like. Generate that bodhicitta and get there, so that then in other instances, you could just be like, oh, I'm going to go do some volunteer work. I'm going to arouse some bodhicitta, and I'm going to go to work. You can just do it because you're there. You understand. You have a habit of arousing the bodhicitta. And so if you want to do this practice quickly, you can just kind of take a minute to consider, kind of do that faster. You can kind of consider the suffering of your mother, do some tonglen towards your mother, another person that you care about, do some tonglen towards your enemy, and then expand it out. But we always start with someone we love, because it's important, someone that we care about deeply. You could be out in the world. Let's say you're out in you're in the hospital waiting room, and someone really arouses your compassion. You see someone suffering in the waiting room, and you're like, oh, wow, great. You just aroused a bodhicitta. You can just do it right then. You don't necessarily have to think of your mother and then, but you first think of someone that you care about, that is easy to care about. And because not all beings are easy to care about for us. So we first start with someone that it is easy for, a specific being, because we can't visualize the multitude of beings. Our human brains have a really hard time with that big of a number. So we think of one person, specific. We arise care for them. And then we think of someone we hate or an enemy, and we focus on them, and then we expand it out. So you can do this practice anytime, for as much time as you have. And you can spend longer or shorter amounts on the different stages. But that's essentially it. And then at the end, we always dedicate the merit of our practice. It's very important. Of course, talk longer than I thought. We've got a drum circle at 1. So what comes next? Yeah, we can do the Chenrezig practice.
Oh my God. So if you would hit this card.
And give me just a second. I'm going to drop the link in for people watching online. Link to the practice. All right, if any of you are watching online, here's the link to the practice in the comments. Okay.
So we'll do this first paragraph one time.
Yatsen jogi nodrune Pema jongne Jesuja Kordu kandro mampegor Ketki Jesu dagruki Jinji lobjir sheksu So Guru Pema Siddhi Om Mahum Pensa Guru Pema Siddhi Om.
And we'll recite this in English now.
Your thousand arms are the thousand universal monarchs. Your thousand eyes, the thousand Buddhas of this fortunate age. You who teach each and every one of us according to our needs. Lord Avalokiteshvara, to you I pay homage.
And we'll take just a few moments to accumulate Om Mani Padme Hum Kri. 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 Om Mani Padme Hum Kri.
Om Mani Padme Hum Kri. Om Mani Padme Hum Kri. Om Mani Padme Hum Kri. Om Mani Padme Hum Kri.
Om Mani Padme Hum Kri. Continue. By
This virtue, may I swiftly accomplish the state of Chenrezig, and may all sentient beings without exception be placed in that very state. By this effort, may all sentient beings be free of suffering. May their minds be filled with the nectar of virtue. In this way, may all causes resulting in suffering be extinguished, and only the light of compassion shine throughout all realms. Right. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks for being here.